Welcome back, guys. So today I'm going to be having a chat with Louis Reynard. There's been a lot of requests from you yourselves to actually do a collab between myself and him. I think there's a lot of synergy in visions that we share, even though we don't necessarily employ the same strategies. There's one thing that we do agree on, and that is that we should absolutely be avoiding Airbnbs as an investment at this point in time. So we're going to be unpacking as to why we avoid them. Hope you enjoy it. Hit that subscribe and like the bell for notifications to stay on top of what's happening at the Property Corner.
Rowan, so let's jump straight into it. Airbnb offers way higher return than longer term rentals. So why avoid this investment?
Louis, I think that's the crux for this whole discussion is that higher gross returns don't necessarily always translate into better net returns, especially when you factor in things like vacancies, servicing costs, time. That's something that's very often discounted in people's lives is their own time that they invest in these sort of things. And then you've got to add to that regulatory risks. So these are the things that I think are challenges in this market and that just don't align to the long-term views and strategies that I'm employing.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to Airbnbs overall, it kind of seems like hype. People are investing in Airbnbs based on fear of missing out. And the tourism market in Cape Town is booming. So should investors ride the wave or just stand back and avoid it?
I think it depends upon your risk strategy. Should you go to the casino and double down on red or black? It's a similar sort of question. But I think to unpack it and to understand it, you need to look at the Cape Town property market. And I think we're referring to Cape Town specifically because that's the hub where this sort of thing is happening. But I think it's important to understand the cycle of this Cape Town market. As recently as 2019, developers were struggling to sell their stock in the city. Many units were converted to long-term rentals due to a weak demand for short-term letting. Fast forward today, there's a boom, there's a demand in the short-term properties, especially in areas like the Atlantic Seaboard and the CBD. But the question, you have to ask is this Airbnb boom sustainable or is it risk-prone? And investors' demand is currently fueled by this high short-term rental yield, as you say, and the fear of missing out. But there's one part missing, and that's the local end user buyer. And that's the part that sort of concerns me and brings a lot of questions around the unsustainability. Because if locals can't afford to live in these areas, as we've seen in a lot of reporting, then the demand rests solely upon short-term investors, and that's dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's starting to become a bit of an issue, and I think some people are just kind of looking the other way. With that said, do you think Airbnbs will outperform inflation? I know inflation is property is a inflation hedge for so many people. Do you think Airbnbs will outperform inflation?
Louis, absolutely. I think history has shown that they are beating, and there's no question that they currently are beating in sort of inflation. And they're probably beating a lot of long-term rentals in short-term, sort of yields too. The question is what's going to happen in the long run? And your big risk therein lies with the risk of the regulatory clampdown. You need to look at global cities, that have implemented things like taxes, zoning regulation changes and restrictions. And these changes mean that you need to adapt and change your strategy. Property is not an easy asset to change your strategy. Very often changing the strategy means disposing of that asset and changing the asset class. The costs of paying an agent like myself, the costs of transfer duty, it's not an easy space to change your mind. So these risks don't align with my philosophy of being predictable, stable, and long-term investing. So in the short term, sure, definitely beating inflation. And as I say, in very many instances, outperforming long-term rentals. But it depends upon the period that you look at it. And I think the days are just too early for us to really understand how we're going to need to adapt and what cost that's going to come at.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of assumptions when it comes to Airbnbs, and I kind of see it as speculating. With long-term rentals, you can work on actuals. It's not assumption. So you can kind of work out your returns. And when it comes to Airbnbs, I think there is quite a lot of speculation involved. And Another question, so many people talk about is, Airbnbs is passive income. You can just sit back and relax and make as much money as possible without doing too much work. You can outsource the management and so on. How do you feel about this? Do you think it is a passive investment, or what is your approach on this?
It can be. So, I mean, there's ways that you can turn it into a passive investment. I don't view it as a passive investment because the moment you create a passive investment out of the short-term let, you're paying your additional returns to some form of a managing agent.
No, absolutely.
And that's where the attraction for that short-term market lies, is if you as the operator, let's take someone who wants to come, and retire and buy a number of Airbnbs and rent them out and manage it themselves. They're not paying someone else to attend to the bedding that's dirty, the kettle that's not working, the booking that didn't arrive. That's being subcontracted. But those fees, often range from 20 to 30%.
No,
and if you look at the additional returns that you supposedly making, you're probably paying a lot of that out to the third party, especially once you start factoring in the cost of maintaining and keeping that service running. So when you invest in an Airbnb or short-term let, you're not just investing in the property, the brick and mortars itself. You're actually starting a short-term letting business along with that. And that requires a lot more active maintenance. No business can run autonomously. Doesn't matter who you are. No business runs autonomously, not even a production factory. There's some form of management involved. And that's very often where the figures get skewed because people don't value the time that they invest into managing those properties themselves. Louis, we just need to look at cities like Barcelona, Amsterdam, and New York, and just look at how that regulation that they've implemented has affected these markets. Cape Town is already discussing ways in which to limit short-term letting to protect housing availability. If investor demand is built purely on tourism, a single regulatory shift could collapse the entire model.
Yeah. Now that seems quite risky. That seems quite like a risky business to me. A lot of people also mention the dual use of Airbnbs. Obviously, you can go and live there in the summer and rent it out in the winter. Do you think this is actually a viable strategy? And how does this actually affect your returns at the end of the day if you had to live in this property yourself?
Look, then you start mixing a lifestyle decision with an investment decision.
Yeah.
And there's merit to that. If you're willing to sacrifice returns for, so the lifestyle component, then that's part of your decision. And that could be one of the attractions to this market. I purely look at property as an investment tool for a strategy that I'm trying to employ. And so I don't want to be occupying that property. Very often the same discussion comes up with holiday houses. Now, I'm one of the first people to say, never buy a holiday house. I'd rather invest my money in the local sort of suburban market. Typically, your holiday houses rent on a long-term basis for a lot less per rand value spent. So I'll give you an example. In Cape Town, Langebaan is a very popular destination for people to have houses. Now, if they were to spend 3 million rand on an investment property in Cape Town, they'd be getting 22,000 rand rental income. That same 3 million rand house in Langebaan, they could probably rent on a long-term basis for 15 to 17,000 rand a month. So I'm going to be the proponent to say, rather invest that money in an area which has strong organic growth, take that money and then go and rent wherever you want to be, go on holiday wherever you want to be, rather than start mixing the investment decision with the lifestyle along with it. There's people out there that's risk appetite might be different, but I prefer to sort of avoid that, because remember, you're going to want to be traveling more than likely at the peak times when everybody wants to be there, especially if it's tourism driven. Over December periods, you can't afford to be living in your own property when that's the highest yielding period.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reasoning some people have is that, although you can only get 15,000 Rand during off seasons, you'll make that money double in December, for example. But again, that kind of forms part of speculating. What happens if your property is vacant, or if you can't receive the rental that you expected? So another thing that so many people talk about is that they don't want to be stuck with one tenant, a normal single-let tenant for the rest of their life. It's more flexible to have multiple tenants. Is this true, or how do you see this?
For sure. Even in the long-term investing space, I don't want to have a tenant for the whole duration of the property ownership. Moving tenants creates the opportunity to readjust rental. If you've had, for instance, in the long-term space, to draw the comparison, if in the long-term space you've had a tenant for 5, 6, 7 years, you've probably very often made the decision to put through a minimal rental increase, and rather retain the tenant. And in that way, you've fallen behind in the market. Now, yes, in that way, your short-term rental can be very reactive to those market conditions. You can put up your pricing in peak season. You can decide whether you want to accept a lease for 30 days or 45 days at a premium or shorter. So yes, you do have more decision, but along with that, more decision comes more intensive management.
And uncertainty, actually.
Yeah, and that management is the part that's being discounted. It's the part that's not being taken into account in these sums.
Yeah, and I mean, statistically, Airbnbs has outperformed the market in the last 3 years. So people ask, isn't this proof enough? Why wouldn't you invest in Airbnbs?
If you bought 3 years ago, sure, you're in the pound seat.
Yeah.
If you bought 4 years ago, you probably not. If you bought 5 years ago, probably not either. So you need to be so in touch with the market and time it perfectly to buy at the bottom of the cycle, experience the upward turn, and then avoid, sort of the clamp down. Now, there's very few specialists that I know that can get that prediction 100% right. A lot of people will get it right by chance. But who predicted, the effects of things like COVID when the rural towns started booming, in an environment where there was this drain out of rural areas. So it's a changing environment. There's enough risk in property as it is. I don't want to be taking speculative risk along with that by being an absolute specialist in not only the property segment, but also the tourism segment.
Yeah, so with that, would you say long-term it's a viable strategy?
I believe so 100%. And I'm actually doubling down in that space more. A lot of the return needs to be, or return always needs to be measured against risk. Now, most properties are being bought with some form of leverage. That's the beauty of property investment. If you were buying cash, you could be buying Bitcoin, shares, anything else. But property creates the environment to take gearing and to leverage your purchasing decision. Now, in that is enough risk. I don't want to be extending myself beyond into a speculative market. The returns are good enough in the long-term space. We're seeing 8.5% in our markets, 8.5% rental yield along with 8% capital growth. And that's not over a 3-year period. That's over a 12, 15-year period. With that, it's predictable. We know what we can budget for. We know what we can allow for. We know what the op costs and management costs should be in those spaces. So we can project forward and look at creating passive income, working towards some form of retirement. And using property as a tool to create wealth along the way.
Rowan, so with that said, do you think Airbnbs is a viable long-term investment to actually scale and grow your portfolio?
Definitely merit in it. And again, depending upon that strategy, it could be part of your portfolio that you try and generate additional cash. To be in a cash flow positive position on your greater portfolio. So there may be a space to actually include something like that in a longer term plan. Is it the only asset, the only sort of property type that I would hedge my bets on in the long run? Probably not, because those regulatory changes, you don't know what the effect of them would be. You don't know what the effect of the tourism industry and the sustainability of that would be. You're starting to mix two markets. So in the long term, we might, sort of eat our hats. But I think there's place for it within a portfolio. But to build a portfolio solely upon that, in a face of uncertainty, probably not the best decision to be making. One of the other things that you need to take into consideration is access to finance. If you're going to be scaling a portfolio like most investors are wanting to do, actually using that rental income to gain access to more finance is key. Now, the banks favor a 12-month or 24-month lease far better than the financials from some Airbnb over the past 3 to 6 months. So you need access to finance to scale. That's what property is all about. And if your income is not being factored at the same ratio, I mean, you're already seeing banks even looking at long-term rentals and saying, well, we won't take 100% of it into account. We might only take 80% or 50% into account in some instance. You know what they're doing with Airbnbs? In some instances, they're excluding it. They're not even looking at that income because they don't understand the sustainability of it themselves.
Okay, but what if I have an Airbnb and I sell after 5 years? This property will be worth way much more. Why avoid this?
It will, Louis, if your rental income in the preceding 12 months has been good. But in the same way, if your rental income hasn't been as good over the preceding 12 months, you may indeed sell for less because you're changing the nature of the valuation method, which would typically be comparative sales, to one of income generation based. So it's the same rationale to say, well, then why don't I go and buy an underperforming commercial building or restaurant or pub or whatever and turn it into a prospering business and then try and sell it? So the same would apply, but there's a lot of risk involved in that too. Whereas in your traditional suburban appeal is driven by families, retirees, investment, a broad base of support that, with organic growth, schools, access to workspaces, proximity to lifestyle amenities. These are more organic and sustainable growth methods. So we can predict them better too, based on historical figures. So yes, you're going to have the great picture where you increase your rental income. You've got to time that right and get out at the right time.
Okay, Rowan, so why are you avoiding Airbnb?
So if you look at this and you take into account the context of the market where we're at now, the questions about the sustainability of this sort of method going forward, risk of regulatory clampdown, and requiring more of my time and effort and restrictive access to finance, it simply doesn't align to the strategy that I'm trying to employ in my own space as well as for the clients that I represent.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Rowan. I think you make some really good and valid points, and it kind of seems risky at the end of the day. Thank you so much for your time, your insight, and your knowledge, Rowan, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thanks, Louis. Nice to have the chat.